Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, Rob Browne here with you on this Friday edition of the college football, baseball, basketball, Major League Baseball roundtable. Got 2 hours of nonstop great segments. Going to be joined in the first segment by Chris Dimino, 680 The Fan in Atlanta. And if you love baseball and you love baseball history, which they are really one in the same, I've never heard of anybody that has done the interviews that Chris has done in his Hardball podcast, and you're going to learn a lot about that. We'll also be joined in the second segment, Dave Tompkins, former chairman of Churchill Downs, the Kentucky Derby, and Greg Williams, six-time national champion equestrian coach from Auburn, talking about the Derby. You'll get some good picks from them. Hour number 2, Bo Carter checks in from out in Dallas. Football writers, National Football Foundation, and Baseball Writers of America. And William Halliday, the intern, the Auburn Plainsman, checks in with us as well. So, hey, we're here 6 days a week, at least 50 hours a month of content. That is a lot. Follow us on Twitter at Sidelines_live. We're here to bring the best guests, and that's what we do. And out on the golf course, somewhere in the Atlanta area where I was last week for the baptism of the granddaughter, we're over there. She lives about a mile from the Battery, Chris, where you broadcast every day. And that's where I met you back in December when Chandler Elizabeth was born. But, man, I've just been watching a lot of podcasts, the Hard podcast. Billy Roberts, my roommate from Auburn, Atlanta, he was going to be on the call with us. He got another call from Oracle. But we've talked about you, and just, again, thank you, first of all, for doing all of these interviews. I watched the one with Hank Aaron. I'm going to watch Stan Musial and Carlton Fisk. Nobody else has done this.
Hey, Rob. First of all, good morning. How are you?
Doing great.
Good.
We're talking some baseball.
Yeah, congratulations, by the way, on the granddaughter. That's incredible. I have 19 and 17-year-old daughters, so I'm not to the other point yet, but I'm about to be an empty nester, and my wife absolutely believes I'm going to be miserable when all is said and done. She's like, who are you going to tell to do the same thing 9 times a day, too? Because she don't want to hear it, that's for sure.
That's right. No, mine are like 22, 25, 27, and then I remarried and got the 34-year-old. That's where the granddaughter is. It's going to be a while on the other ones, but you're right. When they leave, you're wishing they were 6 years old again. You were having to take them to, T-ball or first grade baseball. There's nothing better than having kids. I'm with you.
So I've told my wife I would love for them to be 3 and 1 again. I'll do the diapers thing. Their free will was basically dependent upon me throwing them over each shoulder, as opposed to 2 drivers, boyfriends, college decisions, and everything else. So I want to say it feels like whenever you hear somebody's about to become an empty nester, you go, oh, you made it. And then you go, wait, no. There's still so much more of this to come, including, I'm assuming, that knock on the door that says, hey, maybe I'll stay here for about a year or so as I get my feet under me in the real world. So I'm preparing for everything at this point, not really sure what's going to happen. I do appreciate you talking about hardball that way. It's funny because you mentioned Stan Musial, and the reason that this whole thing, about 22, almost 23 years now, it started because we were counter-programming the regular Braves pregame show. And it started out as like a 15-minute thing where I would talk about the lineups and the pitching matches. Then all of a sudden it was like, you know what? I had this wish list, and I swear to you, I wrote it in 1995. I was doing work at the really big stick in town on Sunday nights, WSB. And I was actually on 2 hours before Bob Costas's syndicated show, Bob Costas Around the World, or whatever it was called. And I'd asked the program director, I said, look, what am I sort of staying away from? He said, just do what you want to do. And I wrote down 100 names of people that I would like to talk to. And it was mostly sports, no doubt about it, growing up as a sports fan. I ended up speaking to 88 of them, including a lot of these guys that ended up certainly being the baseball all-timers. And the reason that Musial was number one, I do a Saturday morning baseball show, and I played like 8 minutes of a Stan Musial conversation from 2001. And later on that day, I had a 40-something-year-old guy say, hey, listen, I've been listening to you a long time, blah, blah, blah. But I'd never heard Stan Musial speak. And I was like, you know what? That kind of makes sense. So I had this, we call them the bag of souls. If you've been in radio a long time, they're called mini discs. And I had these things on mini discs. And I just I said, you know what? Let's see if we can produce them a little bit of pre-production, a little bit of sound, a little bit of highlights, something that might be a little bit different. And that's the reason that Stan Musial ended up being number one. And I think we put 40 episodes out. And I actually just got a little bit of a bug in an itch to start recording some more. So I spoke to Jack Billingham of the Reds, who's fascinating, 80 years old, sharp. This guy played on good teams. This is the Big Red Machine type era. And then Bucky Dent, and I'm speaking to Reggie Jackson next week. And I just said, let me find out if there's people that I can either re-catch up with, if that's a real word, I don't know, or people that I haven't spoken to yet. Let's see if we can get them on.
Well, the bottom line, Chris, you're the players that you're talking about are the iconic figures that we all grew up with. And that's what keeps us so connected to baseball today, even with free agency and the way it is now with guys coming and going. And you mentioned the Big Red Machine. As a kid growing up in Memphis, you could listen on AM 700 out of Cincinnati.
Yep.
WLW. And Marty Brenneman, I think, was the play-by-play guy. And I would listen when I was a freshman at Auburn. I missed being at home in Memphis. I would go out in my car and turn on AM 1120 KMOX out of St. Louis just to hear, Jack Buck and Mike Shannon pop open an Anheuser-Busch in the seventh inning. That's baseball. I love it.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, this is not a knock, but I don't know if 25 years from now, putting a microphone under a lot of these guys who are playing today's noses would actually get you much. I'm talking about guys. I spoke to guys who played in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and certainly the 60s and beyond when they had off-season jobs. Yogi Berra is selling suits. Jackie Robinson is selling TVs and electric equipment. So I just think the stories, I'm not waxing overly poetic, but I think the reality is that these guys have a microphone under their nose so much that we probably know almost everything about them. So 30 years from now, what's really the stories? When you speak to a guy named Eldon Auker, who, by the way, if anybody's still into reading, he wrote a couple of books, and he pitched in the 30s for the Tigers. And if you do nothing else, if you're a podcast person or interested in the game, go listen to some of the – Eldon Auker would be one that you just realize, wow, this guy traveled on a train. This guy was in Detroit when Lou Gehrig basically said, I think I'm done. There's something going wrong with me. And again, the way that I envisioned it and the way that I certainly envisioned it in the early 2000s, I'm talking to a guy named Ernie Coy. Listen to this. Ernie Coy, 1938. He played in the first night game at Ebbets Field. He was in the second game of Johnny Vandermeer's back-to-back no-hitters. And before that game, and those were all on the same night, he raced Jesse Owens out in the outfield. This is a guy nobody's ever heard of. Ernie Coy in one night did things that you look around and you go, that guy did all three of those? He was involved? Yeah. And he tells a story. And my vision is he's sitting at a kitchen table with a landline phone up on a wall with one of them spirally cords. And he's just sitting down having a conversation as an 80-plus-year-old man.
God. Well, I mean, you're right. The players today, we see everything they do. Yeah. And we talked about a lot of the famous coaches, football coaches, Wally Butts, Suge Jordan, Coach Bryant. They were bigger than life because we didn't see them everywhere. But I watched some of the hardball podcasts yesterday, getting ready for this segment. You got a gift for making people feel comfortable. I mean, Hank Aaron was like giving you a hug after the interview. I mean, that's special that he trusted you. And like I said, I've got my daughter and son-in-law, and I've got a niece and Cameron and two great nieces that a lot of friends in Atlanta, and they all listen to you. And they say one thing about Chris Dimino is he'll ask these questions to these people, and they just start rolling because they trust you. And I hope you. We're going to do everything we can to get everybody to follow you, because this is special.
Thank you. And I really if you even listen to the first couple, and Phil Rizzuto, who I think might be the second or third interview. The reason that happened is Phil had been retired for a few years, and he really didn't do a lot. And I'd spoken to his son. He said, I don't really, that sort of kind of passed all that stuff. Well, Whitey Ford called up Phil Rizzuto for me. And I tell the story in the beginning, but he said, do the thing with the Italian guy in Atlanta. I think you'll enjoy it. And that's how Phil Rizzuto ended up coming on and doing about a half hour, 35 minutes. So I was lucky in that regard. There was some word of mouth, and the contact chain became what it became to get a hold of these guys. And again, mostly landlines and home phones. But I never went into them thinking they were interviews. I flat out have said these are conversations. And it's interesting that you say the relaxation. You can hear when you do enough of these. And I think if you're a listener, a discernible listener to this format, anything in the world of sports, you can hear when somebody's getting closer, like getting to the edge of their seat. But you can also hear when they sit back and relax, because it's a friendly room. And they might actually have what will turn into not a Q&A, oh, let me ask these 7 questions, come hell or high water. It turns into, I've never written a question down in my life, because I was always deathly afraid that I wouldn't hear something, because I'd be so desperate to get to the next thing that you wouldn't really have a give and take that I think is much more interesting. Q&As become depositions. Like if we have somebody on with a legal thing on the air, that's more of a Q&A. I need to know this. Tell me something about that. Conversations are, I don't know what direction it's going to go, but if we build up a little bit of a rapport, there's a chance you might even end up thinking of something you haven't thought of in 30 or 40 years, which does happen. Or you might end up saying something that you've never really talked about before, because it was never really the time, place, or the lead-in to get you to that point.
Yeah. No, it's special. And I just got a text from a listener, Steve Phelan in Memphis. My best friend's granddad, Lou Chioza Sr., was the first batter in the first night game that Chris Dimino just spoke about. Memphian and Christian Brothers High School grad. And see, I mean, you were evoking memory. And this is the guy, Steve Phelan, whose cousin just died about 6 weeks ago, Tim McCarver. And here in Memphis, hear him. And so that baseball, let me tell you, the Phelans, they were all born with a batting glove on.
So it's funny, because with the passing of Mike Shannon and Tim McCarver, I did a couple of years of radio in St. Louis, and I did it out of Atlanta, but I went up there, 6, 7, 8 days a month. And what I found out about St. Louis is it's really provincial in this sense. People told me, I was 40-something years old at that time, and they said, hey, don't be shocked if people ask you what high school you went to, because that's a thing forever in that part of the world. And I didn't really understand it. Yeah. But Mike Shannon was the guy who told me. I was on air for maybe a week, and I went up to St. Louis for a week, and Mike Shannon was the one who said, hey, do not pretend to be a Cardinals fan. They'll murder you up here. And I said, good, because I'm not. And on the first show, I said, I'm not. But I had spoken to Marty Marion, Ozzie Smith, some former Cardinals, Stan Musial, obviously, in the past. Albert Pujols became what I would call a baseball friend. He was nicer to me than maybe he was to a lot of media members. And maybe it's because I wasn't there every day, or I didn't think that I was there to take something from him. I didn't want anything. It's just if you can give me some insight. And in 2006, the first year I started in September, they ended up winning the World Series. Well, here's where I get good luck. Bob Costas, Joe Buck, and then Tony La Russa during the postseason basically all blessed me. It's like that made man thing. I'm Italian, so I'm allowed to say that. There is such a thing. Where you sort of get the blessing of the people whose blessing you need if you're going to come into a new neighborhood. So that's what happened to me up in St. Louis, which opens up the door to have, again, I'll call them baseball relationships, baseball friendships with people over the course of time. I'll give you one. There's a guy named Cecil Travis, and I don't think I put this one up yet. I did the last full-blown conversation with Ted Williams, and that's not up on Hardball yet, but it was his daughter-in-law, married to his late son, John Henry. It took me about a year to set it up, because Ted was not in great health for a period of time. And she said, Chris, look, you might get 3 minutes, you might get 10 minutes, but it really depends on how he's doing physically that day. I said, okay. We end up doing 28 minutes. But he's the one who tells me about a guy named Cecil Travis, who was the best player nobody's ever heard of, according to Ted Williams, 1,500 hits. Before World War II, he ends up at the Battle of the Bulge and ends up with frostbite in his hands and feet. He comes back, he's never the same player. If you look up Cecil Travis now for the Senators, you will look at a line and go, geez, who the hell is this guy? Well, he never got to be known because he really doesn't have the post-World War II career that some of these guys had. But that's Ted Williams saying that, the best player you've never heard of is a guy named Cecil Travis. I speak to Cecil Travis because his grandsons listened to some of these things in the late 1990s and early 2000s. They call me and say, my grandfather will not talk about his career, will not talk about the war. He still lived in Georgia, and he came on. And I'm not telling you he was overly verbose, but he did tell the story about his baseball career, and his grandsons had never heard him do that. So I think that's what this medium sometimes can afford. It still gives you an opportunity to maybe hear stories that you wouldn't be aware of, which is why you have to document as many as possible.
No question. Here's another text from Shoney in Valdosta, Georgia. The teenager who jogged the bases on 715 with Hank Aaron was in our Saturday golf group for many years. He's an eye doctor named Cliff Courtney, now retired. You were evoking a lot of memories, Chris. You need to be working for the FBI.
And I joke, like this bag of souls, these guys who are deceased, they sit literally in this old duffel bag on these mini discs. And so Saturday morning, this past Saturday, I did Willie Stargell probably 3 months before he passed. And he had been having medical problems for a couple of years. He was a coach for the Braves. We know certainly his career in Pittsburgh. But it was 20 minutes with Willie Stargell that had not been heard in 22 years. And it was just, you know what? I'm just going to, here it is. If you're interested, beyond being a Pirates fan, are you interested in baseball from the 60s and 70s and hearing a guy talk about some of the things he was able to do, including win a couple of World Series?
Listen, if you can, we're going to take a break real quick and come back for a few. This is absolutely solid gold, and we've got to get you back on much more often because Billy Roberts is going to join us from Atlanta, who is a junkie to you. So we're going to take a quick break, right back with Chris Dimino after this. All right, Rob Browne back with Chris Dimino, 680 The Fan in Atlanta. Hardball is the podcast, and we're going to tell you how you can follow this. And Billy Roberts over in Atlanta. Billy, jump in here. Billy, Chris, I call the Braves fans because our footprint here in the Southeast, we're flanked on the western front by the Cardinal Nation and on the eastern by Braves country. And I know my freshman year at Auburn, the Braves were in the playoffs, and over at the fraternity house as a pledge, you never really had to do anything when the Braves were on because everybody was glued to the TV. And I've got the 680 the Fan app on my phone, and I listen to the Braves games with Ben Ingram. And, of course, I used to listen to Skip Carey, Ernie Johnson, Pete Van Wieren on 750, of course, before y'all got the games. But the job that y'all do, and we go up to the Battery, it's less than a mile. So if I go to Social Tavern or whatever and have too many road sodas, we can walk home, not to worry about getting in trouble. But Billy, jumping here with Chris Dimino. This is and talking about Phil Rizzuto, by the way, 7 decades with the Yankees, and just absolutely amazing. But Billy, jump in with Chris.
Yeah, hey Chris, this is Billy Roberts in Atlanta. I listen to you every day on the radio. Just love your work. You're great. I was Rob's roommate down at Auburn and connected him with Frank Duffy and Chuck Oliver in Atlanta. So that's how Rob's gotten to be friends with both Frank and Chuck. So
well, Billy, thank you. Listen, again, this format, different than music. It's more communal. I joke, there's somebody listening who knows the answer to everything. In sports talk format, there's no other format. There's no other format. Look, we can all be angry some days. We can all be depressed some days. We can all be elated some days. But the circle, like I call Atlanta the biggest small city in America. There's 30 people. There's 30 people who run Atlanta. I know who 15 of them are. The other 15 don't want me to know who they are, which is just incredible. So in the sports talk community world, it's sort of that way as well. One guy might beget another guy who begets 2 more people to get you to either listen once in a while, jump on board, download an app if you're out from another state, realize that your team might be talked about if you don't live in the Atlanta area. And that's the beauty of a lot of look, the internet and all this stuff, we got some problems with it. But at its best, it really makes the community bigger without making it feel oversized. I think that's what sports talk does better than any other format.
Yeah, no doubt. And you've been here a long time. I think you've probably been in Atlanta just about as long as I have. So what I was begging Rob to get you on as a guest because I'm his go-to Braves expert. I'm like, I know nothing compared to Chris Dimino. You've got to get him on. So this is a personal thrill for me that you're on Rob's show. I just think it's fantastic.
Well, thank you very much for that.
Absolutely. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about, I mean, you obviously have been covering the Braves for a long time. And in addition to that, the Falcons, because you're on the local market here. And, I know that Arthur Blank has, tried sincerely to, spend a lot of money to get the Falcons where they need to be, but just they don't seem to run that draft the way the Braves do. When I'm speaking about prioritizing like local guys, the Braves celebrate a local guy. They bring Olsen back, local guy, make a big deal about that. The Falcons seem to swing and miss all the time when they have those opportunities. And you've looked at two franchises side by side for years. What is I'm not going to ask you for an explanation, but maybe you do have one. It's like, why don't they embrace like local talent like the Braves do? Because it sure does seem to sell a lot of tickets, and they're also successful in doing it.
It's a really good question. And, I've never really banged on the idea that the Falcons don't draft Georgia players or Georgia Tech players because I just think the NFL is a little bit different. Now that we're up to 17 games, it's not 162. And I think it's much more of obviously you get a week off so you can either stew or bask in the glory of a victory on a Sunday or a Monday night or even now a Thursday night more than you can in baseball, which is not only a next man up mentality if someone gets hurt, but it's next game up and it's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know. I did the Falcons pre and post for 10 years, and I did Braves Braves Radio Network pregame for years that they were not good. And by August 1st, you're sitting there going, well, I got to put my head on a pillow. I got to look at myself in the mirror. I can't lie about what it is. If it's not good, my thing was I did the Falcons for a few years when they were really good, go to the Super Bowl. I did a few years where they weren't. I will say this about both organizations. I'm not telling you I haven't got called to the principal's office before, because I have. I've gotten called to the principal's office by everybody in this town at some point over 30 years. But you can't lie when something is not going well, when something's not good. And I'll give credit to both organizations because I've never really been overly slapped on the wrist. I'm not a shock jock. I don't want to make it personal. But if it's not good, you can't fool people. Like, you can't say something's good that's not. The Falcons thing to me is really interesting because you only get 16, now 17 shots to prove that you're good when you lose one-score games, when you play in 8 of them. There's good news and bad news in that. You're not getting blown out. The NFL is a one-possession game, but are you smart enough to win them? I don't know if local anything comes into play at that point. I don't know if you have a Jordan. Look, Jalen Carter was interesting this year because he was available when you took Bijan Robinson. I'm not upset that they didn't take a Georgia guy. There are people around here who are. I just don't think football is really conducive to having a tie to local. I mean, it's nice if it happens, but I wouldn't be going out of my way. The NFL doesn't sell tickets the way that baseball does either. They're in a communal world. They share tickets. Baseball, you sort of got your TV network, which is a mess right now for a lot of teams, but you also have the what's my affinity to the team. I don't think the NFL really works like that. I think the NFL is how good are you, and will they give you my time, money, and emotion as an investment?
Yeah, that's good insight. Another question I want to ask you about is Spencer Strider. I'm fascinated with his ability early in his career to start looking like a young Nolan Ryan. I don't want to throw hyperbole out there, but we might be witnessing like the early days of a Hall of Famer here. How do you feel about that?
He's kind of a must watch, and it happened really quickly in less than 30 career starts. He's a guy that I think, if I wasn't in this market, have I heard enough about him? I don't want to play the legend and lore because the Paul Bunyan thing sometimes can happen, and it's not really fair to players. There's an expectation. You've got to stay healthy at that job more than any other job in sports. Being a pitcher, I cross my fingers every time a guy goes out. That's why I appreciate you saying I don't want to talk about him being a Hall of Famer because there's so much wood to chop. I don't even think you're an ace until you do 4 or 5 years injury-free, where 33 starts, 28, 29, 30 of them, I believe I have an advantage. I feel that way with Spencer Strider on the mound, though. I feel like my guy on the mound is every bit as good, if not better, than everybody in your lineup on a given day. That makes him must watch. And boy, he has piled up some numbers, no doubt about it.
Chris, I watch a lot of Braves games, and I'm in Atlanta a lot. And you look at Ozzie Albies. We have Auburn baseball coach Butch Thompson on with us every week talking SEC baseball and Major League. He's 5'6", 5'7", one of the best power hitters around. And another question that just came in from somebody. You lived in St. Louis a few years. I used to work for A.G. Edwards, so I was in St. Louis a lot. Your best recommendation of an Italian restaurant on the Hill?
Yeah, it's funny. So I didn't physically live there. What I did is I did 2.5 years. I did a show up there where I would go in. If the Cardinals were in town for a week, I'd go in. If the Rams were in town. So I did 5, 6, 7 days. And it's crazy, too, because Joe Garagiola, I got the good fortune to get to know his son a little bit, but I spoke to Joe. And, the whole fried ravioli invented at the Hill on the Hill in St. Louis. I'll be very honest. I don't remember that little area, the Hill. The best place I went was, and it was so funny, they had the Velvet, which is basically, it's an Italian thing. Again, I'm Italian. I'm allowed to say it. Plastic on the furniture. Gapi is a word that I think could be used, but it's so throwback. It's so like the land that time has forgotten. Yep. I don't remember the name of the place, but I remember going in and seeing velvet wallpaper, like crushed velvet wallpaper, and I said, "Oh my goodness, this is like going back to the motherland." And it was, I did more takeout from places like that because I was either at the studio or going to games because I was in town when the Cardinals were playing or when the Blues were playing. I didn't really get out as much in St. Louis as I would have liked. But I can tell you, good Italian, there is such a thing as bad Italian. There is such a thing as, that's not as good as some other places. Whenever I see no menu, I'm always in. If you have a menu and I got to turn 3 pages, no offense to the Cheesecake Factory or anybody else, but that's not necessarily a place I want to eat. I lived growing up going to diners at 3 a.m. Now they have big menus, but look, you get a hamburger or a milkshake and French fries. You don't get a lobster or I don't know, what's grouper. Just because they have it, don't order grouper at a diner at 3 o'clock in the morning. And an Italian place, I don't want a menu. I just want you to put bread and butter on the table, and then I want whatever 3 pastas you have, and I'll choose from that, and I'm okay.
Absolutely. If you ever go to Memphis, go to Pete and Sam's. That's okay. A good one. It's a classic. But I got to ask you something too. There's so much history. We just got literally a couple of minutes. Yeah. Tell people how they can keep up with you. And I'm going to say we got to get you back on again because there are so many people going, you got to get this guy on. He is absolutely. This is like having, John Bonham's dead, but his son's coming to play up here in Memphis here. I just got the thing last night at a concert. But we got to get you back on and tell people how they can follow you.
Thanks.
And one last thing with the baseball right now, do you think college baseball, the popularity of college baseball is helping the majors? Because I think it's annuitizing the sport because we're getting hooked to these guys when they're at least 3 years of college.
Yeah, look, it's the one thing that, hockey doesn't have. You don't get to see them play hockey. So by the time they get to your team, you're just rooting for the sweater as opposed to the player. Then you get to know the player. I do think anytime, it's why college football and the NBA, when college basketball was more of a thing, you'd see guys for 3 or 4 years, you had an affinity to gravitate towards. You knew something about a guy. Baseball's got a chance in that regard. Now, if they're tucked away for 3 and 4 years in the minor leagues, as most of them are, you might lose that. But I think anytime, especially in a game without a mask on, if you can get personalities, Adley Rutschman's in town, a Baltimore Oriole catcher, you want to push young stars as much as possible. I think the game is getting better at that than they've ever been. So that way, even though guys change teams and uniforms and some teams can't afford guys, so they trade them a little bit sooner, I think the more you know about a guy, the better off the game is going to be. And I do think they've made a concerted effort to have that be a part of it.
Yeah, and it's great. How do they follow the podcast? And also, you're on 680 every day. Like I say, it's a great show.
Thank you. 11 to 2 every day. The 680 The Fan app, which is at an app store. You can stream that if you want a Hardball podcast. If you go to any place, if you're a podcast listener. The good news is the greatest growth in podcasts is 45-plus-year-old men. And the reason that's a real thing is because it's become so simple. It's 2 buttons. You can listen in your car. You can listen wherever you want to. But you literally, it's not a thing. You subscribe. You find an episode you like, you hit play, and boom, there it is. So Hardball Podcast, HARDBALL, would be the easiest way to find it. I will have about 20 more episodes going up before the end of this baseball season.
Well, Chris, thank you. A couple of the names that are coming out, we'll let you go.
Okay. I'm going to put Cecil Travis up. I'm going to put the Ted Williams up. I've got a Willie Mays conversation that's going to go up. I'm good at, it's funny. I'm doing something about the Moneyball A's where I spoke to Ron Washington, Tim Hudson. Why am I drawing a blank? The first baseman who wasn't a first baseman. The guy that Chris Pratt played in Moneyball. I can't believe it. It's Friday morning. But I spoke to four guys from that team. Scott Hattiburg. I spoke to like four guys from that team, and I'll put an episode out about the Moneyball A's, that incredible 20-game winning streak. So those are the types of things. I'm going to do some theme shows. It's basically what it is with multiple guys interviewing.
Well, that's going to be incredible. Chris, thank you so much. Have a great time out on the golf course today. Look forward to our next visit. This was absolutely amazing.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob. Hey, Billy, thank you very much for the recommendation.
You got it, Chris. Thank you, buddy.
Look forward to talking to you at 11. Take care.
You got it.
All right, thanks so much. That is Chris Dimino, 680 The Fan in Atlanta. And Billy, you were right. Wow. And I'll tell you one thing. We're going to go from one off the charts history of baseball. I mean, those interviews, as I watched a lot of the podcast last night. Anybody listening, do yourself a favor. It'll remind you of why we love baseball, because of the people. And watch the podcast that Chris does with Hank Aaron. Hank Aaron reaches over afterwards and just gives him a hug and says, man, thank you. I mean, he's so open. And to get into that mind, we're going to do it again to a native of Mountain Brook, went to West Point, Dave Tompkins, former chairman at Churchill Downs. And Greg Williams is on with us as well. Going to be with us in a second. Now, Greg is the 6-time national champion equestrian coach at Auburn, and has won five straight SEC championships. And like I said, when I saw him in Atlanta last week, Billy and I saw him. He had lost track of how many SEC titles he's won overall. He was on a 5-game winning streak. But there's something about horses. And Dave, you did see a request, and I'm not going to name this person, but this is a request, and this is an odd because you're coming on here. And I'll read it to you real quick.
Oh boy!
About the Kentucky Derby, and this is from a really dear friend of mine, one of my best friends, and they were asking about the Derby, and here's what they needed. I'll show it to you. Coming back in here, it was from Tuesday, and it was about a cup that they have all of it. Can you tell me what it was? And I sent it to you. You're going to try. I know you're going to try to get that cup, and I'm trying to find the information about it. But yeah, what do you think about that? I think it's the Woodford Reserve Cup. You think we can find it?
Yes, sir. So, first off, the one and only time I met Hank Aaron was at the 2009 Kentucky Derby. So we'll do a little crossover from the last segment to this segment. But yes, Woodford Reserve is the presenting sponsor of the Kentucky Derby, and they have a number of activations. One of which, and probably the most special one, and that's why your friend has that as an annual tradition, is they make 1,000 mint juleps in these beautiful silver cups. And obviously the cup is the memento, but to have that cup is a real status symbol in Kentucky and for those folks that love the Derby. And so I'm sorry I couldn't get it this week. The team is working around the clock, and there's been some, as Greg knows, there's been some trouble and some issues up there, which caused even more work. So we're going to try to get a cup next week.
Okay. Yeah, and I appreciate your help. If you can do that, I'll get you a steamer, pack of crystals, and a 30 rack of Ham's beer, the official beer of the people who aren't at the Derby. the best, only the best.
No more incentive than that.
That's right. Greg, Dave was the chairman up at Churchill Downs, and the popularity, there's just something that's just spiritual about horses. And we talked with Greg, and I've known Greg a while. And Dave, you talked the other day about running. You'd go out during lunch and go run 3 or 4 miles around that track. And Greg, you live it every day. You are so lucky. But have you ever been to the Derby, Greg?
No, this is the first next year will be the first year that I'm not working on that weekend, and so
Okay.
I'm going next year.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah, it's
150.
we're
Hold
we're
those
adding
thoughts.
to our staff.
We got to take a quick break. I just saw the stopwatch. We're going to be right back. I want to hear about this because I forget you are now in a new role. Be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back with Greg Williams and Dave Tompkins talking Kentucky Derby. Here's a pick right here from Jimmy Ott, our good friend at ESPN 104.5 Bet Rivers podcast down in Baton Rouge. Angel of Empire is my pick. So by the time this segment is over, we'll probably have somebody pick every horse, at least one person, because my phone is lighting up like a switchboard operator when a UFO has been seen or Bigfoot was seen, crossing the road. But Greg, keep talking about this because I forget you've really haven't had a day off in what 25, 30 years.
Well, I've had a few days off, just they don't always come at the best of times. And so I'm looking forward to that. And you talk about living the dream. It may not feel like it in the grind, but if Dave gets to jog around that track, if that's his exercise track, I mean, what a spot, what a spot. So that could be living the dream. So I'm looking forward to it. It's there is something magical about horses. As I said the other day on your podcast, Will Rogers always said the outside of a horse is good for the inside of a man. But you add into the greatest and longest tradition in sports is horse racing, what you're in. That is, I mean, it's you just feel the vibes, and you can go to these tracks. And I encourage people that are in, to at some point go watch the workouts in the early mornings and stuff like that with a cup of coffee in your hand, and you'll become a race fan right then. I mean, it is truly, it transcends you a little bit. So. That's just it's an amazing feeling. So thank you for all your work on that, because it's a feeling that you capture. You have to work hard to capture this for a lot of people.
No question. Dave, so many people that I know are on their way up there to the dirt. They're already there. I've seen the pictures of Frank Duffy with other bon voyants up there living the dream, as Greg says. It's Friday. The race is tomorrow. Let's get a layout of the conditions. How many years were you at Churchill Downs, and what was your actual role there? I always say that you were kind of in charge, but there's a lot of people to make it happen.
I was there for a handful of years. I was not the chairman, but I was the chief marketing officer for the corporation. So part of our responsibilities is we put on the entire front side of the Derby. So all of the fan related stuff, ticketing, sponsorships, product licensing, hospitality, all of that. And then another group worked on the backside of the Derby, the real meat and potatoes, the horses and the trainers and everything that goes on in the barns and the backside, which is, to Greg's point, the most special part about the whole experience is to go to the backside in the morning, 6 a.m, watch those workouts, Derby week. There's nothing better in the world than that.
Well, one of my really good friends, his daughter rode for me. Actually, is in town. She's got her master's, and he does what you did with that front side of marketing for SMI NASCAR tracks. And it's so I've got a very inside look at what goes on ahead of time. I mean, it is stress, 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 work, work, work. Then all the grandeur, you know, when the race starts, then it gets a lot easier for you. But it's the workload on the front end is unbelievable in putting those on.
We could relax. The folks that put on the front side of it, we could relax once they sang "My Old Kentucky Home," and then we could maybe have a little beverage, sneak a little beverage, and watch the race, and then we could have some fun.
And it's you got to do whatever it takes. I mean, he's been in this a long time. But it was just a year ago that I've been out there with him at 1 o'clock in the morning. He's painting white stripes on the track because they just ran out of people to do stuff. You know.
Yeah, that's
whatever it takes, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, we would find ourselves hanging sponsor signs at 4 a.m. You know, Friday morning. I need
to connect you two at some point. Y'all would have a great time together.
That's great. That would be awesome.
You know, and I will say this too. There's so many parties. If you tried to multiply, not just in this country but around the world, fundraisers. I mean, where people tie things in with the Derby, and you have 1,000, 1,500 people there raising money for some really good causes. And both of y'all know, and Greg, you and I talked about it a couple of days ago when you were on. And I have a friend that started a new organization of using horses. She has a lot of horses to help people deal with stress, a lot of PTSD, a lot of combat veterans, and there are a lot of them out there. And it's amazing how, and Greg, you mentioned it the other day, that people just come out there and they want to be a part of the horses. Well, even if it's just shoveling up their Joe Biden or whatever it is, you know.
Well, we have a very strong veterans program here at Auburn, and so some of them spend time out there, and it's amazing to hear their stories, and we certainly owe all these veterans so much thanks, gratitude, and so it's really good to me to see them get that good feeling captured with horses.
Yeah, it is.
There's a strong relationship between, there are two big Army bases in Kentucky, Fort Knox and Fort Campbell, a real strong relationship between Churchill Downs and both Fort Knox and Fort Campbell.
Rob, I'm gonna switch over. I just moved to a new office and I didn't realize I had that big glare behind me. So
you're good. You're good. And this is where are you? They've moved you from
the athletic complex. We took over. You know, they built the new football complex, so we're in now. My staff, we're in the old football offices.
Well, I tell you what, I know that those are some beautiful views. That new football complex is the Starship Enterprise. That's
John hasn't bought into it yet. Our AD, but out back, I'm overlooking that grass practice. I call it the Derby field though now, so I keep thinking we can start turning it into a horse place now. So I'm gonna set some jumps up out there.
We'll call it Hughes Haven.
I'm gonna set some jumps up out there. We just have some Derby.
I love that, Dave. You do know that the 42 girls on the equestrian team at Auburn, they're the only team there that gets to work out in the same weight room always that the football team did. As Greg said, because they're so big, so many people on the team, but also you're the only sport ever at Auburn to not have to draw from the football funds.
For our facilities. Correct. Yeah. We've always been self-funded, and we've got a great industry behind it. And we've just got to learn to marry and promote that. I think even more. I think that's a side that people don't. The first thing people say, well, boy, equestrian's got to be expensive. Well, no, next to football, we're one of the most cost-effective sports we have here. But it's because we have an industry, we have a passion. You know, people have a passion for it, and we're just really starting to hit stride in capturing that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, let's talk about the Kentucky Derby, the horses that are up there, the exact number that will race tomorrow. And again, your favorites, and I want to hear Greg's favorites.
Absolutely. Well, just to build on the point of 42 women on their equestrian team, I think that's what's most special about Derby is that if you were slicing the pie, it's really 55% women, 45% men. I mean, the women really, really embrace it. And way back when, I pretty much had an entire women marketing team, and just their love of it and the love of the horses is just something really special. But yeah, it's an interesting field this year. There's going to be at this point there's going to be 21 racing tomorrow. They've had to do 2 scratches. One of the scratches, unfortunately, the trainer got suspended because of the horse deaths there this week. Forte is the favorite at 5-1. He opened at 3-1. And then Angel Vampire that we're talking about, everyone's favorite, my favorite, Duffy's favorite. I think he's at 6-1 now, and he opened at like 9-1. So those are the 2 front runners. There's also a Tapid Trice. I think one of the panelists this week was laughing about their name, but I think he's at 5-1 also. Both Tapid Trice and Forte are Todd Pletcher horses, and Todd is the preeminent trainer in the industry, and he usually has 3 or 4 horses in both the Derby field and the Oaks field, which runs later today.
It's not an impossibility that Pletcher could actually, with the horses he's got running, literally could go 1, 2, 3 today.
Yes.
I mean, that's what I haven't got to do a full study on this, but the Empire horse is something one of my good friends who is an avid racing fan, and that's one he really likes. But if I change the mix, I won't go off of Forte. I'll stay with Forte.
Yeah,
those Tapit horses, man, I'd never like to bet against Tapit horses, though.
It's an interesting field too. First off, great news. It looks like we're gonna have ideal, pristine weather both days, which is both today and tomorrow, which is pretty much a rarity there. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a fast track, but most of the favorite horses are what are called stalkers. They kind of hang back and start to make their move around the 3rd turn. So the early pace, I think, is going to be particularly important tomorrow. It could be like one of the most fascinating races in Derby history tomorrow, or one of the most boring races. That's I think, to me, that's the real underlying story for this particular Derby.
Got a question here from George Jones, Franklin, Tennessee. What is the exact distance of the race, and what is the maximum number of horses who can ever race in a Kentucky Derby?
The first question is easy. It's 1.25 miles. The second question, this year there's 21. Typically there's 20. I think the qualification criteria has changed a little bit since I was there. But I'm gonna venture to guess that you'll rarely see a field more than like 22. At that point, it gets crowded to the point of safety concerns.
Yeah. Greg, have you ever? I just got to ask you this question. As an equestrian coach in all your years, people will donate horses to y'all. Have you ever had one donated that may have run in the Kentucky Derby? That's the
Derby. We take. They call them OTBs, off the track horses, off the track thoroughbreds. We have had a number of those in our program, and that's it's a great system. And I encourage everybody, just because a horse isn't fast enough for whatever, may not be quite sound enough to stay in racing. It's you can give them a great alternative life. We are in our sport, we are the rescue program for ex-show horses. So that's really what really use now is we've got the horses that can't stand up to the riggers anymore, or just don't quite have maybe the talent, but they're a great fit for college programs. And so there are some great organizations that really give second careers. It's almost like you wish you could do that for some of our professional two-legged athletes, to where you have people that would rescue them once they fall out and help them set up in new careers. So there might be some of those. I actually do know a golf group that's doing that right now for golfers, women golfers.
Great point. I mean, it's sometimes we would look at other sports and be critical of our horse racing sport, but one thing that the industry does so well is to take care of the horses in their retirement.
Oh, that's all our girls care about. That was something that really mystified the Auburn people when we were starting this program. Even I had one dean call me and he said, one of the girls came there, so looking at their college, and basically pulled out in front of the place with a truck and trailer. Her parents got out, and they talked to him, they met, and they said, well, if you find a place for my horse, then I'm coming here. I mean, they were like, he said, what? So he called me, and I told him what barns that you could use. I mean, it's horse first. They don't care about their comfort until those horses are taken care of.
Yeah.
And one of the funnest things to do Derby week, and next year's the 150th running, and for anyone going up there, I'd say take the whole week, and if you can. And a great day is to go into Woodford County, adjoining county, and go to the horse farms, and you can see a lot of the past Derby and Oaks winners there.
Well, and I have got to do that, Rob. People, and I have been to the track. I've been to other races up there. I've been around to the farms. It's just never hit for me for the May 1st. I've been to Belmont. I've watched Pharaoh win the Triple Crown there. I've got to do some big races, but I mean, I cannot wait till next year when I get to join you guys at the Derby. I'm getting texts and all that from my friends that are there right now, and they're saying next year you're coming with us. So,
yeah,
looking forward to it.
Well, I got to ask you, historically, that next year will be the 150th year. How many Triple Crown winners have we ever had? 3 or 2?
Oh no, there've been probably. I should know that.
We've had 3 recently.
3 recently. There's been about 20. There was the 70s was a big year with a big decade with Secretariat and Seattle Slew and Affirmed. Then there was a long break until American Pharaoh, and he won in 15, and then there've been 2 since. So it seems to kind of come in spurts.
It does, and that's what you kind of warn some of the younger people that are in it now. So listen, it can go 30 years. So don't get used to it. It can change up in a heartbeat. You mentioned Seattle Slew. I've got good friends of mine who are owners with the Taylors on Seattle Slew, are actually Auburn grads. So Auburn's got a good tie there. Another big shout out to our vet school at Auburn, Rob. I don't know if you know this, but Bold Ruler was saved at the Auburn University Vet School. And now look at what the dynamic, something would have filled it, but look at how the genetics would have changed had he passed away.
Golf, the Grand Slam, whether it's Bobby Jones and his version of it, and the Tiger Slam, it's only happened twice, and both are sort of asterisk Grand Slams, if you will. The second hardest thing is to win the Triple Crown. You've got the Derby tomorrow. Then you only have a 2-week break until the Preakness, and then you have 3 weeks until the Belmont, and the Belmont is an entirely different race.
That's true. I mean, it's such a different race, and the skill set that a horse has to possess to win all of those, and then the different conditions, and they've got to have a lot of stamina just to be able to generate that kind of speed in short amount. And I mean, not a big time span between the races. So it's a unique athlete for sure.
Here's something interesting from Dave Cody out in Bellingham, Washington. Visited Secretariat at Claiborne Farm in 1986. He's buried there now. Mm-hmm. Also was in Lexington for the women's Final Four and took a day trip to visit Secretariat. Said his ears perked up when the TV cameras arrived. He knew what was going on. I can remember that was 1973.
73. This is the 50-year anniversary. Yep.
Yeah, and because my parents collected those cups and those glasses for years from there, and I'm surprised, that it didn't melt the glass the way my mother drinks the vodka. But anyway, the Derby, the whole aura, and like you just said, the vet school, and there's also a giant monument, Dave, at the Auburn Vet School on Wire Road of I think it's a Doberman Pinscher to the military service dogs. I think it's Marine service dogs. Mm-hmm. And when you take a tour of that vet school, I think from one end of the hall to the other is 1.2 miles, Greg. I've never seen anything like it. We're going to take a quick break, a few more minutes with y'all. This is great stuff. So many people are asking questions, and I'm going to try to get to more of them, but we'll be right back with Dave Tompkins and Greg Williams talking Kentucky Derby. right, more Derby talking. Tomorrow there'll be 11 races, and Greg, you know about pressure. You know it. Good God, you know about it. And you do too, Dave. So many people there. There's so many traditions that go on there. And nobody knows. Mr. Ed's as close as we've ever come to knowing, but what is going on with those horses? Because I know from competing, and I'm pretty wound up. I'm kind of like JoJo the circus boy, but in the AKC hunt test for the Mid-South Hunting Retriever Club and whatever, junior, senior level masters with the hunting dogs, they can absolutely feed off of you. And if you are worked up and jacked up, they know it, and they become test wise. And there's just a lot going on, but they are animals, but man, they're a lot smarter than people realize, aren't they?
Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Oh yeah, I'll let the novice go first, and then I'll defer to the expert. Well, that's one of the problems this week is that a couple of horses got loose and went running roughshod through the barn area, and that's part of the whole thing is that they know what's going on this week. They're very, very intuitive. Greg knows the mind of a horse much better than do I. But what I do know is that on race day, the trainers change a couple things. They feed them a little earlier, a little later. They're very routine driven, and they change their routine on any race day so that the horse knows it's race day, and that's a really cool part of it. It's the one and only kind of day they'll have in their lives. I mean, the Preakness there's crowds, and the Belmont there's crowds, but not crowds like at Churchill Downs, and not cameras. And there'll be probably 170,000 people at the track tomorrow. And then when they get in the gates, and there's 21 horses in the gates, and just the way the whole race and how loud it gets, it's their one time on stage, and it's nothing like it.
Greg, I mean, I can imagine you've done this so much, but every time it's exciting. But what's it like for these? You're talking about the Derby and your routines and all for the jockeys and all.
Well, I don't want to have the stomachs of any of the jockeys or trainers tomorrow. I know that feeling, and it's nerve-wracking. And the first thing I know that these trainers are going to want to know is a little bit about the attitude of the horse. You talk about that feeding time. It's the first time you're really going to know, just to kind of get a sense of do they feel good or not. And you can just see that. And I remember being at Belmont when we thought that Chrome was going to win it. And this is just my observation as a horse guy. I told my wife then, as I was watching him, I thought, he doesn't seem to have it today. I mean, I think he was just flat that day. I mean, literally when you watched him come out, I could see that piece, and I was so disappointed. I wanted to see that go, and it did run that way. I don't know, tired or off day, but everybody has them. And like to win the Triple Crown, to have your peak days on those 3 days is unbelievable. But then, so the adrenaline, they're going to feel it from the jockeys. They're going to feel it from the crowds. Everybody around them can set those horses off, sometimes too much, and then you can get into trouble. But there's just so many things that have to go right. And then once you've made your plan, they've already decided this is when they're going to go, this is when they're going to break, this is the position they're going to go for. But then you got to call audibles when all of a sudden you get cut off, that lane's out. And I mean, it's a nerve-wracking watch. It's fun to watch maybe when you're not highly vested, but I can't imagine as the owners and trainers watch it.
And you know what, Robbie mentioned that the Derby is race 11 tomorrow on the card. Also, what people don't realize is that the jockeys in the Kentucky Derby, that's probably their fifth or sixth mount of the day. So and many times, and the race that immediately precedes the Derby is a very important race in the industry. So most of the jockeys racing in the Derby raced in the race just prior. And we talked about my team working hard and painting signs at 4 a.m. No one in the industry works harder than those jockeys. They are so underappreciated as athletes, in my opinion.
Yeah. Bo Carter is on with us now. Bo is the National Football Foundation writer, Baseball Writers of America. And Bo, you live in Dallas. There's some people out there with some money, the old foghorn, leghorn. Why, this here horse is the finest horse. His father and there's an old saying, My friend David Carrington told me one time at a dog trial, he said, Browne, dogs can't read their pedigrees, but their owners can. And if you don't train them and you don't spend the time with them, none of that stuff matters. But, Bo, we're talking about the Derby. Davis, former chief marketing officer of the Kentucky Derby. Greg Williams, 6-time national champion equestrian coach at Auburn. You as a fan, as a great writer, as a true grit journalist, have you been to the Derby?
No, we started to go my junior year at Vanderbilt, and I think somebody had to study for a final exam. Coach Williams. Coach Williams, we need to get some of those Western riders and get them as Derby jockeys, man. We need some more women jockeys, equal time there, you know.
Okay, yeah, that's something. I don't know if any of them have aspired to do that, but that'd be interesting.
They can make some good money out of it if they could compete well, I guess.
Yeah, I just thought about that. I mean, what is the average weight of a jockey?
I think the max is 126 pounds. I believe that they have to. They can't weigh more than 126. I believe.
Yeah. Well, Greg is going to be out there, Bo, where you are in Dallas. What, in 2 weeks? Tell Bo what is going on out there, because
we're honoring Taylor Sheridan. It's something that we had done. The NFL used to do these dinners, and it's to raise money for our national organization. We're putting on a dinner there, and Bo, if you put me in contact, I can make sure we can get you in that room if you would like.
I'll send an email, Coach. Thank you so much.
May 18th, and if you're friends with Rob, we'll get you in there. And
thank you.
It's to honor Taylor for what he's done. I mean, he brought not just the Western world, but the whole world of horses into just the mainstream living room. People that had never, always knew horses a little bit, just became passionate about it. I mean, I hear it on airplanes, and reining became big, and that's one of our college events. And one of the best reiners in the country, Craig Schmersel, we were talking about that and how it's changed the industry. I said, now when people ask me about reining, I said, have you ever seen Yellowstone? And they say, well, yeah. And I said, that's reining. And that's what that's his job. He said, well, that's what I say. I said, told a guy on the plane the other day, I was a reining horse trainer. He said, what is that? I said, have you ever seen Yellowstone? And it has just been just phenomenal what he has done for horses and that lifestyle. That's
great.
Taylor Sheridan's he's an incredible rider. And he's probably the golden boy of Hollywood right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's good though. I mean, and the focus on horses. I think America needs more. You talk about people that live in these big concrete urban jungles where there's, they don't drive. I had an opportunity to live in New York right when I graduated from Auburn to intern for NBC Sports, and I look back on it. It was going to be with a guy named Michael Wiseman, who became executive director of NBC. I'm a dumbass. I didn't do it, but I came back and I interned for Channel 3 WREG in Memphis. Then I went to WRBL Channel 13 on 13th Street. Had a great couple of years there as a reporter. Then I got into the investment business, but I've always kept the radio and now radio and podcast going. But I will say, my dad said, if you want to live in New York for 6 months, that's fine. Go for it. We'll back you. We got you taken care of. I said, well, Dad, there's something not right about this place. And I've been up here before. He said, well, what is that? I said, well, there's no pickup tracks. There's no pickup trucks. There's no pickup trucks with gun racks on them. And there's no horses except for those ones pulling carriages around Central Park. It just doesn't feel natural. And that's how much growing up in Memphis and Germantown and Collierville, there are horses everywhere. I mean, I've got many friends who have horses here in Shelby County, and my 3 kids, when they were little, before I remarried and got Mallory, now she loves them too. But we go out to my friends to ride horses, and I say, well, you want to ride horses? They say, I said, you love horses? They go, yes, I do. I go, here's a shovel. Start learning what it takes to maintain that horse. But horses calm people down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just nothing like watching wild horses. Told you about my client in Houston, Mississippi, the veterinarian. Someone gave him a pair of Mustangs, and over the years, he ended up having over 100 Mustangs. Man, they're prolific. Man, they're frisky.
Now, if you have any listeners or viewers in New York, they're saying not so fast, my friend. A close second behind Kentucky in terms of horse passion is the state of New York, and you've got Belmont, of course, in Long Island, and Aqueduct in Long Island, and then go up north and go watch the Travers Stakes. I mean, that is it, they are right. and all the citizens love horses there, and they love to bet on them, and it's a big part of the New York culture.
So that's and I know Rob's talking about the city, but boy, I mean, upstate New York. I mean, a lot of a lion's share of my jumping seat recruits are New Jersey and New York.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sitting here getting a message from a friend of mine who's up in at the Derby right now, and she's saying so crazy about all the horses being pulled. She goes, "It's nuts around here." And by the way, Dave, this is my friend who really wants that cup. So
okay,
I'll make it 2 steamer packs of crystals and a 30 pack.
You're gonna add a little sweetener. All right, very good.
Nothing like
it's been a tough week up there. Greg probably knows, the actual stuff around it. I've just read the newswire, but it's been they've had to put 4 horses down. A couple horses dropped their mounts and injured the exercise rider and went crazy all over in the backside. It's just been a really tough. It's been a trainer. I think it was his first Derby horse. It's real sad. Some young man from Barbados, trader, got suspended. It's been a tough week for Churchill Downs, for the industry. I think I applaud Churchill Downs leadership for being decisive and making quick decisions, but it has been a challenging week for him.
Yeah, here's a text from Slim Pickens. What in the wide world of sports is going on up there in Louisville? I have never heard of something like that. I mean, that is, like, I remember being at a rodeo, the Liberty Bowl, with a kid, and one of the horses went down there. Oh, God. I mean, my kids, everybody in there, Greg, you I mean, it was horrible. And we knew what had happened. And, and the reverence, it's the love that the people around those horses have for those animals. Greg, it's something you've never seen it until you see it, and you appreciate it. But when I live in a place where we have a 45-acre park in the middle of Memphis called Shelton Park. Over 700 deer in the herd, turkeys. Pretty sure we got some big cats, but we got horses riding over there. And I'm gonna tell you something. Every time I'm out there riding, I go over there and I feed them, and it just calms my boys down. I don't know what it is, but if you don't have horses, you really don't have a country.
Yeah. The most shocking moment of my professional life was at the 2008 Derby, and Big Browne won, but a filly named 8 Bells finished second. And to watch her try to chase down Big Browne coming down the stretch, it was like Muggsy Bogues trying to chase down Michael Jordan. And I'm watching it from the winner's circle, and all of a sudden you hear like 100,000 people shriek, and 8 Bells went down, and then the entire track was quiet as the ambulance came out, and 8 Bells was euthanized right on the track. It was just it was the most horrifying moment of my career, and it brought some grim reality to it. But praise Greg and everyone in the industry for taking such good care of the animals, which they do.
It is, and I mean it's I think they probably are going to be a little tougher on this one. They had to do a shutdown. If you remember what happened out in California years ago, they just couldn't let things perpetuate. They had to get to the bottom of it before another horse runs, and could injure themselves or somebody. So they don't have a choice on that, really. It's no matter what the reason, they've got to get to the bottom of it before they continue running out of that barn.
Yeah. And I think about it in Bo, you think about all the great stories and the great movies, and every one of these races, there's a movie that's yet to be written. And I think about watching when the pandemic first started, there was something called Peyton's Places, and Peyton Manning pretended to be on Monday Night Football, and he was talking with Al Michaels, and they're talking about Howard Cosell one time was in Louisville for the Kentucky Derby, and he was sitting out there in the lobby of the hotel where he was staying, and he said, I don't know. These people are coming up here all asking for my autograph, and I'm overwhelmed. And Al Michaels it was Jim McKay, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat.
Yeah.
Jim McKay came up to him and said, well, Howard, you're welcome to go up to your hotel room at any time and be in private. And he goes, well, I never thought about that. It took away all of Howard's power.
Now they think it may have been true, the backlash, if I remember right, when he was doing the commentary on the Derby and said a horse had to go back and be reshoed. And I think everybody kind of lost it on that,
And Louisville, the home of Muhammad
they don't
Ali.
realize what a big deal that was to horse people.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and I think, look, Greg and Dave, I didn't mean to keep y'all so long, but it is Derby weekend. It only happens once a year. Then you'll have the Preakness, you say, in 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks after that is the Belmont. So a Triple Crown in 150 years next year. So this will be the 149th. We've had about 20 Triple Crown winners, but only 3 in the last 30 years?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. There was 73, 77, and 78, then all the way till 15.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Greg, look, and Dave, I'll let y'all go. I'm going to get on with Bo, and but let people know one thing. Give your pick, Greg Williams, and your pick, Dave Tompkins, and then we'll take a commercial break. Be back with Bo Carter and Greg, William Halliday. That is the intern on our show, Auburn Plainsman. I think he's already interviewed you. And
Billy Ray Valentine.
Billy Ray Valentine is what I call the intern. He writes for the Auburn Plainsman. So he's going to come find you. But let's give your pick, Greg, and your pick, Dave, in about 30 seconds.
I'll still stay with Forte, and Dave, I want to come run on that track with you someday. That sounds like I got a new bucket list. So
all right, very good. You're to date.
The Derby was it. Now I want to run on the track. So
Angel of Empire, a Pennsylvania horse. Barbaro was a Pennsylvania horse, and I love Barbaro. So rest in peace. So Angel of Empire.
All right, looking forward to it, man. This has been great stuff, and we'll do it again. Throughout the year, I love talking about horses. I think this is great stuff. And Bo, I've given you Greg's contact information when he's out in Dallas. And we will be right back with more talk on this Friday edition of Sidelines. It's Derby weekend, especially today and tomorrow, right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back with Socrates, Bo Carter. Socrates, gang. All right, we're going to be talking a lot now. That is incredible stuff about the Derby. And again, it's one of those sporting events that just transcends everything because of, I think it involves horses, and we love horses. But hearing they've had to put 4 horses down this week, and I just got a text from a friend of mine who's there. She and her husband are up there right now. She said it's crazy. They've had, that's really unusual, and nobody likes to see that. Well, we love horses. They become part of us in our blood. Bo, let's switch gears right now and talk in college football. You've written 81 pages of that Tales of Mississippi State Athletics. I got to ask you, was there ever a time when Jack Crystal said, let's go down on the field and talk to John Carrero? John, well, Jack, Mississippi State just struggling here today, but I've got Jerry Clower here on the sidelines, and he's going to make us laugh. Did you ever meet Jerry Clower in all your time?
Yeah, it was.
I'm sure you did.
Oh, yeah. He flew on a road trip to Florida one time, about a 3-hour flight on one of those old charter Martin 580s, whatever. And we heard about 6 hours. No, he was always entertaining. And Jack used to get a little perturbed between among all our family and friends here. Clower would kind of come in and take over the halftime show, and by the way, we've got 6 commercial breaks we've got to get in the next before we kick off the second half. So they were, but no, he was hilarious. Knock him out, John. Remember those old routines.
Well, that's you're talking about the hard breaks that you have, and when you listen to some of these coaches, can you imagine trying to go to a hard break with a Coach Bryant or Vince Dooley? Suge Jordan, Pat Dye, these coaches, it was very hard because they start telling these stories and you're going, we may never get this story again because there's so much there for it. But I can hear Jerry Clower. From Yazoo City, Mississippi, which is it's where Panther, I think, is it Panther Creek National Wildlife Refuge is down there. I remember walking around there bird watching one time as a teenager with the bird club, the Biffle bird watchers from the Beverly Hillbillies. Miss Hathaway was not with us, but thinking about, being tracked. I'm sure it was named because there used to be panthers there, but man, there were a lot of ducks there. It looked like a good place to hunt. William Halliday, the intern, this will be your last show, you said, before you take off for the summer of working up at Camp Benetton? No.
Mentone.
What is it? Mentone, Alabama.
Ski, Alabama.
Yeah.
Remember.
Ski, Alabama. Yeah. I tell you what, you're going to have fun up there. Have you finished school yet?
I have. I finished school Wednesday.
You made it? You're going to be a sophomore?
Yes, sir, I am.
I used to always sweat those report cards, man. It's like one time my older son, Wilson, told my younger son, Max, he goes, Dad? I go, what? He goes, you didn't tell Max. I said, what? He goes, he didn't make it. Max started crying. I said, oh, come on. He made it. Of course he did. Only Jethro Bodine could do the 6th grade 6 straight times. William, let me ask you this. We've been talking a lot on this show today, a lot of baseball history. We had Chris Dimino on from 680 The Fan over in Atlanta, who does the Hardball podcast. That was some of the coolest stuff on baseball. He'd interviewed, obviously, Stan Musial, who is it? Carlton Fisk. Yeah. Talked about Carlton Fisk and a fight that he had with Thurman Munson. Just some incredible stuff. And George Brett, great baseball players. Do you follow the history of baseball? Sidelines, the history, traditions, and the heroes. That's what backs up. That's kind of your insurance policy if you're a sports writer. But do you know much about baseball history, Major League Baseball?
The history I do know about baseball only really comes back from the Yankees. Like that's probably the most, and then maybe a few Cardinals that my dad has told me about. But not as much as like one of my friends from high school. He's a big baseball fan and follower. I know the Babe Ruth, all those people, the Mickey Mantles, all that, and Hank Aaron and all those people. But other than that, I don't really know much.
Well, watch this Hardball podcast with Chris Dimino if you like baseball, and everybody listening, because he's going to add another 20 on there. But a lot of these guys, they are gone, but they're just they remind you of why we love baseball. But there's a lot of it is the teams stayed together for a long time. We all remember the Big Red Machine, Cincinnati Reds with Johnny Bench, Joe Morgan, and damn, they were good. They were really good. Listening on WLW AM 700 out of Cincinnati. Bo, let's talk now about college football. What's going on? There's a lot of talk about rules changes. We've got to speed the game up. We've got to make it more attractive to TV. Well, the product that's on the field is as entertaining as has ever been. How far will be too far with shortening the games purely for TV?
Well, that's a good question. Well, the one thing they proposed they didn't do, they were going to keep the clock running after incomplete passes until the last 2 minutes of each half. And I talked John Jenkins and some of these run and shoot guys were not real happy about taking away the passing game a little bit more. But I think the deal with the downs, not stopping on first down, the NFL's done that for years and years. And William's seen high school and college football. These guys move around pretty fast. In fact, about 30 years ago, William, before you were born, they had a thing called the down stick. There was like a 10-yard sort of a fiberglass thing. But I think the players kept running over it, or the out of bounds plays that got torn up a few times. But they went back to the old chains again that Rob and I have known for years and years.
Yeah. Well, you have the chain gang down there on the sidelines during the games. And, boy, I've seen a few players run into that and get their leg twisted up in there. Not a pretty sight. William, again, among your peers, you're now a rising sophomore. And when you're going to a game, I ask you this a lot, but what is it that you're interested in? If it's are you there for offense, or are you like a purist in baseball who loves a 2-1 game in 9 innings?
I'm there for the offense, but I'm also there for less penalties.
Yes.
That's what I'm there for. Just if we can chop that down to maybe a few, not as many penalties, I'm good for that, because it just kind of ruins the game for me a bit, just because they keep moving them back, my favorite team. So, the less penalties, the better.
Well, yeah, it's like some of these reviews are ridiculous. You expect them to bring Dr. Bodden, the pathologist, on there and go, well, if you notice his right tip of his foot, that's the furthest metatarsal there of the carpal bones, looks like it's just a 1,000th of an inch on that line. And we're going to take a look, and you're going, was he in or was he out? I mean, it is to the point of ridiculous. But the average college football game is gone from 3 hours and 35 minutes or something now. They're trying to get it down. I think it's 3:17 now, but these rules changes. So for the record, Bo, can you confirm they did not pass the rule that says we're going to keep the clock running on incomplete passes?
Yes, that was right. And they are going to change the first down thing got approved, which, it'll cut it down a little bit. Part of the problem too, Rob, and I hate to admit it, ESPN the network's taking 3 and 3.5 minute commercial breaks. They used to be like 90 seconds. And now, in fact, the conferences and the colleges have had to take quite a few actions. ESPN was cheating. Well, I sort of keep signaling out to ESPN, ABC, CBS, but they were filtering a little bit on these commercials, going like 3:15, 3:30 or whatever, 3 minutes and 30. And they've got the back judge actually sits with a stopwatch or a digital watch and times them, and he starts motioning to the guy, what they call the red hat on the sidelines. You've seen the guy walk out with the wearing the red hat that motions for him to get back. But now the officials can actually start the game without TV coming back. And that, that's, you're talking about maybe 20 spots a game. That's another, if it used to be 90 seconds, had another 90 seconds, that's another 15, 16 minutes of the game. So that, they got to sell shoes, I guess. So that's where it goes.
Well, I'll just say this, as my dad would say, a lot of these commercials that are on now are so gross. You want to have the mute on, and they're going into places, let's say, that they didn't used to go. And it's like, I'm sorry, you're killing me, And then you got the ones, these iconic brands out there that they want to be different. And they want to take 100+ years of loyal branding, and some imbecile, some living brain donor in the marketing department wants to be different. And then they try to, get you back. Good luck on that. Hey, Hamm's is the beer you've been looking for since 1865. How many guys get to drive around in an open air Willis Jeep with a grizzly bear? Honey, I'll be home. The bear and I are going for a ride. It's just, that's a man's beer. boy, do I wish Friday night. Wouldn't it be great if tonight at 7:00 we had a Dean Martin roast on with Foster Brooks, Don Rickles, Rowan and Martin, Rich Little, Dean Martin up there. What was in those drinks? I don't know. Did he even really drink? I don't care. It was funny, and we need more TV like that. We got way too many people that are uptight and don't know how to laugh at themselves. William, thinking of college football in the way too early department, in the portal, I know Auburn is trying desperately to get Peyton Thorne a portal quarterback. You know, when I see these young guys out there, I call it virtue signaling, like the current players, like, you know, saying stuff. It almost makes me think like, you know, you don't like competition or whatever. But what was Hugh Freeze brought into Auburn to do? Win friends or win games?
Win games.
Yeah.
He has many friends.
Yeah. So here's my point. It is, to me, the quarterback position. William, you played baseball. You're a hell of a baseball player. Auburn went to their 8th pitcher against South Carolina last Sunday. 8 pitchers. Still lost the game 8-7. When is enough? And why you just came out of playing baseball, and I played with your dad and your grandfather and all of our dads. Man, they were out there, you know, having cocktails, and they were tough. I mean, these guys had been in World War II or Korea or whatever, you know. We had a lot of fun. You got kids now, they've got personal trainers, they've got knee pads, they got everything in the world going for them, yet they're always injured. I don't remember so many injuries today. We got kids that are showing up for college that don't have much gas in the tank. William, explain that to us.
Well, I think that some of the injuries are just like they could keep playing through them, but they choose not to because they don't want to ruin their future or anything. Like I noticed that especially like with the younger players in the NBA. Like one of my favorite players, John Morant. Like, dude injured his hand really bad. He kept playing through it though. I mean, he had to tape it up really hard, tape it up a lot. So, I mean, a lot of it's just like they don't want to ruin their future. Whereas I feel like back then people just went through it and they just need to do it right then and now. So that's just, I think, how a lot of young people think.
Well, to me, that's just part of it. I mean, you play football, you play any sport, you're going to be injured. And I'm so tired of, and I'm not attacking you, William, but people saying, well, if the coaches can do it, the players can. No. When you're 18 or 19, no, you can't. I'm sorry. You hadn't earned that right yet. A 45, 50-year-old coach, 60-year-old coach probably was making $15,000 a year coaching high school ball when he first started out. And the wisdom and the wit that comes from that experience, that's why they get paid that much. And what we're doing now about NIL, and I think the fans are already, the backlash, you ain't seen nothing yet. When you put a team out there and people start realizing, I mean, we're paying this kid $300,000, yeah, and he sucks. And if he wants to walk at any time, he can, yeah. Okay. Wow. Let's see. I'm not paying for that. And I know it's the law of the land now, but you know, there were a lot of things. Jaywalking is a punishable offense by a day or two in jail. When was the last time you saw somebody arrested for jaywalking? Guys, I love college sports, but anything that makes college sports more like pro sports, I'm against it, Bo.
Totally right. And William had a good point there. William, did you play select baseball or club
I played club baseball for 1 year, but I had like 3 different injuries that I couldn't play that much. So
we talked about it before too. A lot of these kids are playing. Well, it's good that they're playing multiple sports. They haven't synchronized them down to 1 or 2, but some of the kids are playing a football game on Friday night, getting beaten up, and then coming back and pitching in a select team baseball game the next day. So I think, you know, that raises, like William had a good point there, that raises the injury quotient a little bit because, you know, they maybe might have gotten a stinger or something on Friday night football. And then they're practicing, you know, all weekend when they should be resting for the football or basketball game. So I'm not trying to blame, you know, select ball or the other stuff because it's great training for the kids, but it really makes it a big time constraint on them. And also, you know, just it kind of, especially pitchers, it really works on their arms that they're pitching 10 or 11 months out of the year. So that's, got to rest them sometime.
Yeah. And this is interesting thing that just came in here from Ewell Gibbons in Live Oak, Florida. A notable SEC head coach has turned away a potential transfer who wanted him to make a promise in order to join the roster. The demand had little to do with NIL and more to do with his role on the team. Shane Beamer said the unnamed transfer wanted his status as a starter guaranteed upon arriving into South Carolina. His coach has chosen not to play ball. Quoting Coach Shane Beamer, and I love this. We had a young man, I wouldn't call him much of a man, long neck beard never saved his day, but we had a young man that wanted us to promise him a starting spot last night, and we wouldn't. So he's going to another SEC school. Watch out. Don't let him come to your school. You're an idiot if you do. We're not promising starting jobs, Beamer said. We're here to compete. That's the first thing. You know why? Because he's got a badass father, Frank Beamer, Virginia Tech legendary coach. If you start guaranteeing, you are out of your mind. I'm telling you something. I didn't like people when I was a kid that wore white cleats. I don't like people that want you to guarantee them a starting job either. But we're going to be right back. William Halliday, Bo Carter, Rob Browne, Friday Sidelines, right after this. All right, Paul, I kind of wondered if you guarantee me a starting position if I come to see you. But anyway, we've hit. Look, that's what we call in the financial markets a dead cat bounce. Okay, we're going to get a bounce off of this one. That kid needs to be called out publicly and shamed, okay, for guarantee me a starting position. I would say he has lost his mind. But you know what? Any coach that would do that is a damn fool. You can't allow that. But I'm already, and I'm going to say this, Bo. You know, you think about, we used to be able to recite the starting lineup and the hometowns. Now you're like, what we got, that's why this stuff's going to work itself out. What makes college, it makes us attached to these teams is they love the school. And I'm tired of people saying the school does nothing for them. You don't even begin to count what the school provides in terms of an opportunity. But William, let me ask you this. You're a rising sophomore. And you're going to be a writer, a great writer. You've got friends that are probably in pre-law or pre-med. Let's say your pre-med friend as a sophomore says, I want to start practicing medicine. I'm going to start doing brain surgeries on Tumor's Corner Fridays from 5 to 8 happy hour. He can't do that, can he? Because he hasn't finished and progressed and checked all the boxes. Undergrad, medical school, residency, fellowship. That's what NIL is. It's nothing but illegal cheat. It's just legal cheating. It is pay to play versus, okay, you have accomplished something and we're now going to pay you. So 98.5% of the students in college are going to have to pay back or pay as they go for that college education. And if they're a pre-med or pre-law or accounting major, if you're a sophomore in accounting, you can't go out and do people's taxes and say you're a CPA until you're a CPA. We've got a bunch of damn snowflakes out there that are sucking up to these kids and want to be best friends with them. NIL is I hate it. I know it's a necessary evil, but if you're giving more to NIL than you are to your own children or tithing to your church, as the famous Julio on Sanford and Son, you got a problem, Mr. Sanford. That's a problem. William, are you getting NIL?
Fortunately, I'm not getting NIL, but I do get a paycheck from my parents about every month to help me out with college. But
there you go. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But again, William, see where I'm going.
Yeah.
But do you need $300,000?
No,
and it's not the job of that college to provide for your 20 or 30 family members and extended family members and hangers on. That's all I'm saying, William. By the way, who are those jerseys in the background?
Bernard King and Peyton Manning.
Okay. Bernie and Ernie.
I love it. That's pretty cool. Now, are you moving into the South Donahue residential complex for next year and having an executive suite overlooking the baseball field?
I'm not. I actually asked my parents to move in there freshman year. They wouldn't do it. So
wise parents, you need to live in a simple 8x10 Geneva Convention special.
Yeah,
I'm kidding. I had of course, if you're living in a fraternity house, that's about what it is.
Yeah, but I will say another story about an NIL thing where a player asked for more money. I heard from one of my dad's friends, works for Spire Sports, that a Tennessee player last year named Brandon Huntley Hatfield, he asked Coach Rick Barnes for 30 minutes of playing time and a nice NIL deal. Immediately shut him down because he said he didn't play defense.
Do the initials mean anything to you, son? You know what? Here's what gets me. This all started with that Ed O'Bannon, the basketball player at UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, you know what? As students, I can't wait for the regular student body and say, wait a second. We need to be getting NIL because we go to school here.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't have us, you wouldn't have a school. I mean, I'm telling you, man, P.T. Barnum is laughing his butt off in heaven. Okay. A sucker is born every minute. And that's people that support this crap. You can do whatever you want, but I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to give to my Catholic church. I will support things that I believe in, but I don't do it because I have to. I do it because I want to. But I've changed the way I feel about so many nonprofits and organizations now because I'll just say this much. If you're not spending the money the right way and you're paying yourselves big exorbitant salaries, I'm not supporting it. Coaches, they deserve what they're paid if you want to look at it that way. But when you're 18 and 19, everybody could make a case. Well, we're making all this money. No, let me tell you something. How about this? Why don't all you football players that think you need all this money, then pay for your own education? And let's see, I just checked. What do you think it would cost, Bo? Let's give a ballpark figure to build a brand new 100,000 seat football stadium in today's dollars. What do you think it would cost?
Probably $300 million at least, without the amenities. And
yeah,
Rob, I was going to say too. Heck, in college, William's familiar with some of the kids that he knows or whatever. If you're going to Vanderbilt, you're getting an equivalent of $65,000 tuition, all tuition paid scholarship. That's $270,000 for $270 for 4 years, plus tutors, plus training table. I mean, these kids are, at a private school or an Ivy League school, you're getting like $400,000 worth of benefits just by being there or whatever. So and then Jim Boeheim's great line, Miami went out and bought a great basketball team. It's very true. And plus now Nick Saban, like William and you were talking, is trying to, I guess on bidding war for a good quarterback after being disappointed with their spring training. So it's a wide open, it's the wild, wild west, Robin, William.
Yeah. Well, there's just a lot of, the money part of it out there. Everybody loves to spend everybody else's money. And that's what's going on. William, this is not an attack on you at all. All right. I got to ask you, William, I'm going to start with you and then go to Bo. Alabama yesterday announced that Brad Bohannon is no longer their baseball coach. The story started getting out, Monday. Ohio sports books were not allowing any betting on Alabama baseball. It's just, I'm just curious. That was interesting. They pulled the starting pitcher right before the game. William, what do you know about this story? And if you were a writer for the college newspaper, the red and white or the crimson and white, whatever, would you be demanding full disclosure?
I don't know as much about the story, but I have heard about it. And I also, there's a guy from MUS that actually plays on the team, so maybe I'll have to ask him more about it, see what he knows. But yeah, I'd ask for full disclosure about the situation if I can, just to help me write a better story. So,
yeah. Well, and that's Bo. You're a writer for the Baseball Writers Association of America. You are connected with baseball people all over the country. I can't remember this happening in college. I think about the Chicago, what they call them, the Chicago Black Sox. They got in trouble for it. But I mean, college baseball, this stuff isn't supposed to happen.
No, it's hit college. This is one thing that really sends up a red flag for me too, Rob, because if you remember in the late 40s, early 50s, what City College of New York, what State University of New York now, and Kentucky both got had the death penalty applied to the original death penalties by the NCAA because they were cavorting with gamblers or whatever. Players were shaving points or whatever, and sports gambling for college and all athletics legal, I think, in 38 states. So, boy, it's there was a story about 2 weeks ago or about a month ago. Gamblers were using social media and ostracizing Brigham Young players for missing free throws late in a basketball game because they lost big money on some game. So, man, it is. I mean, you can see people threatening families. This whole thing could really blow up. I'm hoping and praying that it levels off, but it's there are too many temptations out there.
Yeah. Well, just got a text from one of our listeners. Good Lord, man. This is Clark Kent, Metropolis, Illinois. 4 states now have banned betting on Alabama baseball. Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. And that's going to hurt, but no Pennsylvania because, the Amish are big bettors. But William, you heard what Bo just said. Betting on college baseball. Wow. Pete Rose, by the way, that bowl haircut he's got, you can still see the soup stains on the side of his head. Looks like clam chowder there. I loved him though. I'm a huge fan of Charlie Hustle, sliding into first base. But what's going to happen? I mean, Brad Bohannon, look, this is all alleged, but the team, they're claiming they knew nothing about it. William, where do we go here? And if you were a writer, as a writer, you have briefings, like the White House has briefings every day, and you hear stuff and your head spins, and you go, what did she just say? What was that? But full disclosure, the sunshine laws and all. How hard would you dig on this story? Are you going to dig on this story, even though you'll be technically, the Plainsman still publishes during the summer? Will you be writing, as they say, and Bo likes this term, in absentia? That's north of Birmingham, isn't it?
North of Birmingham. Close to Mentor.
It's up there near Tennessee border. He's from absentia. I knew his daddy.
Yeah. I guess, I'd go in depth about it just to know everything and give everybody the details about it. As far as like what they should do about it, they probably need to get just their players to just open up about different, or like try and give them as much information as they can, even though they said they didn't know anything. I'm sure some players do. Maybe some of them are covering up for the coach, don't know about that, but there's always something there that you can pull out from them or something like that. But yeah.
Well, we need true grit journalism. And there used to be a lot more investigative reporting. Bo, you know that. Holy cow. The NCAA investigator was seen at this campus, was seen talking to so-and-so. Remember, back before we had the interwebs, as Al Gore called it, he invented it, people would say, well, they'd call up on a sports radio show and they go, well, I got a friend, and just between you and me, and everybody listening, I always love that one. Privately, I love it when they'll say, privately, he said, and of course, everybody can hear this now, but they'd say, they say that the NCAA is, they's down there looking around. Oh, come on. There's only like 30 people in the entire NCAA staff in Indianapolis, and most of them are Big Ten people. Any irony there why the Big Ten schools, Michigan, Notre Dame, never get in any trouble? I mean, it's just purely coincidence. I mean, because they're purer than the driven snow, aren't they?
And like I said, Rob, Alabama's had a tough year between the basketball case and then this baseball. I kind of feel for AD Greg Byrne. I saw he was at the Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
In fact, Alabama beat Vanderbilt 11-2 last night with interim coach, the interim head coach down there, the pitching coach. So, like you said, it's all alleged, and I always love the famous William loves this. The sources say that William Halliday was seen at the Tiger Motor Lodge last night,
Yes.
the Tiger Inn or whatever.
He was seen at
the Auburn Supper Club still down there, William. I forgot to.
Yeah, it was torn down tragically, but William was seen at the Panda Garden last night ordering 2 orders of chicken fried rice. Unconfirmed sources have confirmed. Well, I got a text here just now. Oh man, this is interesting here. Wow. Okay, from Bill Murray. Absentia is 23 miles northwest of Jasper. Okay. Just make sure you know that in absentia. But William, your job never ends, and I want you to do this. The more you write, the more you're going to learn. But don't ever be intimidated from going and finding the story. I don't want you to end up in a concrete sleeping bag in the Jersey River or something like that. But dig for those stories, because we're not seeing nearly as much investigative journalism as we used to. I mean, what does the Pulitzer Prize even mean anymore? Do they even give the thing out? We need people to be digging and finding these stories. Again, also, as Tony Barnhart, who I have tons of respect for, Mr. College Football, says, too many times nowadays, people are injecting their personal opinions and wishes into the story. So, hey, the Alabama baseball team is getting a black eye over something that their coach allegedly did. So we'll see what happens on that. But it's just, it's not a good look for college baseball. Mm-hmm. At all, But William, let's get the takeaways now. We got a couple of more minutes left. What have you learned in your first year as a writer? Or did you write for the Daily Buzzard, the MUS paper, or whatever it was called?
It was called the Owl's Hoot. That's what it was called.
Okay. Yeah, the Daily Buzzard, the Daily Fabarian. No, but what have you learned in your first year writing for the Plainsman?
Yeah, I think something I've learned just in terms of that, because I didn't take my first journalism class till the second semester, so it was really helpful in just getting to know how to write, and just my editors helping me out with that. I think something I learned, I never knew this, but for game stories, this is just probably just for them, but like just a known thing or whatever, but it's 500 words is for a game story. That's the least amount of words you got to have for a game story. Other things are just how to lead into quotes, how to do that, and just when to like break it off or something. You quote the first part and then you say that coach or something like that. That's something I've learned. Another thing is just like how to leads, obviously, I'm getting better at the more I write. And then also just kind of how to ask questions now, just going to a few press conferences and how to get the answers you want from the coach or players. That's just something I've learned.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've run out of time. Bo Carter, love having you on here. Anytime you can join us. And William, have a great summer while you're up there in absentia. But you will be still writing a ghost writer. But most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. People, don't ever forget that, and always give to give. Don't give to get. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, happy Cinco de Mayo. But remember, true Mexican Independence Day was September 16th. We'll celebrate that as well. See ya. Out of here. Thanks.